Hi, welcome back to my garden. Time for another video. Last week I was speaking about leaving our comfort zone and why that's important. And perhaps, in a sense, misunderstood or perhaps applied in a cautious, comfortable sort of way. Now, as always, these videos are, at least to some degree, a conversational starting point. I really love it when I develop a thread, an exchange. It doesn't happen that often. Well, it happens on every video, and that is because I am blessed to have a brother who is generous with his time. And sometimes some of you out there who are not family connect, and that is always wonderful. And fingers crossed it might happen this week. Who knows? I'd love to hear from you. I don't want to sound too desperate, but there we are. But after last week's video, it began a long conversation theme during our weekly meet-up on a Sunday. And some of those ideas I think are worth elaborating. Actually, another purpose of these videos, whether this will ever see the light of day or take shape, bear fruition, I don't know. But I've often thought of them as a sort of video notepad for ideas that might be incorporated in a mythical book that I have dreamed of writing. And maybe it'll get written. It is actually outlined and partly written, but who knows, one day I might get around to finishing it. And I have a lot of material in the nearly 300 episodes that I've recorded on this channel. Now, I think the basic gist of my argument about leaving our comfort zone and how it is maybe misunderstood it's not the best way of putting it, but it'll do. Is that people see leaving our comfort zone as stretching ourselves in a sort of learning process, and that is all fine and good and very true. But I think what is ever more necessary for me, and quite possibly for you, for the people that I would imagine are watching these videos, is that leaving our comfort zone means reconnecting to a slower version of ourselves. Amongst the multitude of content creators, there are a number who advocate, and they cite examples of famous thought leaders who do this, but they advocate retreats. And retreats have really been part of reflective spiritual practice for centuries, probably millennia. You know, you go out into the desert and sometimes under the influence of something mind expanding, or sometimes just contemplating the stars. And in the vastness, you sort of face your inner self. And I think in our modern age, these sorts of experiences, for many of us who have become kind of programmed into a particular ostensibly busy, frenetic sort of life, it's a very necessary thing to do, to switch off and kind of power down and then reboot. I don't think there's anything controversial in suggesting that is important. But I don't think it's something that springs to mind when people talk about leaving our comfort zone. And yet I would argue that for many people, sitting quietly alone in the garden, if you're blessed with a garden, or perhaps your local park, with everything switched off, clearing your mind, not doing anything that is useful or part of a lifestyle you might talk about with friends at a party in glowing terms. Just sitting there quietly, perhaps being a little bored. Boredom is something we have to deal with, and it is something that we keep at an arm's length, because in our modern age we are made to feel uncomfortable in that sort of nothing's happening state. Because for most of us, whether it's socially or professionally, we are hooked into a system that is bombarding us with stimulus and information, and saying that to not be bombarded is problematic. And so one way in which I think we can leave our comfort zone is start testing more simplified states of mind. And eventually, what I believe might happen, certainly what I'm hoping will happen with me over time, I've seen the sort of green shoots, is that you start noticing more. My comfort zone is electronic consumption. And a lot of it is, I'm not talking about cat videos. For example, and I use this frequently, my sort of pursuit of chess improvement. Indeed, I have another YouTube channel that focuses on adult chess improvement. And there is so much stuff out there. And it's very easy to get into a rhythm of doing stuff almost thoughtlessly. But the medium that you're operating in doesn't make you feel that you are simply going through the motions. It makes you feel like you are, in some sense, being productive and perhaps even stretching yourself. And in that sense, a sort of, if one thought of training, learning, experiences, for many of us, going outside of our comfort zone sort of suggests hardship, whether chess training it's mental, or physical training where it's painful. But perhaps learning to relax, learning to be very much in the moment, initially, when we try doing it, will make us very quickly feel distinctly uneasy. It's hard to do. It's a topic that from time to time I circle back to, sort of mindfulness meditation practice, things that I've never really done but perhaps should do. One of my approaches is to listen to music, but to try and actually listen to music. I've picked one piece of music. It's and I strongly recommend it. I'd share a link. No, I won't share a link. You can look it up if you like. The name of the song is Japura River. I think that's it. It's a composition, not I hesitate to call it a song, composed by Philip Glass, the minimalist composer, classical minimalism. I don't know what you should call it. I love Philip Glass. And this version of this short composition is played by a guitar quartet from France. How you would pronounce their name, again, it's a challenge for me. Ophris, OpHris. And it's truly wonderful. Maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, the different guitar parts, and they sort of weave in and out. And I try listening to it where I just listen to the music, where I'm almost, this is going to sound ludicrous, I want to be the music. I want to be one with the music, kind of as if it's a river and I'm just floating in it as it moves me along. And it's incredibly difficult to just stay listening to that music for 4 minutes. And I've spoken before on this channel about actually giving this as an exercise once to some of my maths students, very good maths students back in the day. Most of them, it was a homework exercise, of course they didn't do it. 2 did, and they said they found it very, very difficult. They were real high achievers, hard workers, but just sitting and listening to the music gave them sort of a twitch, itchy feet. They wanted to get out the chair, they wanted to move, they wanted to do something. And not doing something makes us feel, I think, in this modern age, very, very uncomfortable. And it's a good thing to, I think, to confront. Now, of course, when you talk to people about leaving your comfort zone, that's not what anyone means, I don't think. But it is an example of what I would imagine is probably true for everybody in some aspect of life. An example of a sort of psychological state that has become, by default, a safe space, but it isn't a safe space like some sort of cave that you go into in psychoanalysis and you sit there and do whatever. I'm not sure if you know what I mean, but I've seen it in the movies, and you imagine this place, and it helps you deal with problems and issues in your life. And I think we all have states of being which we retreat into when life becomes overwhelming. And we need that, actually. But I think we can push the boundaries of it a little bit. I think we need to. For some people, that safe space is luxury. And for those folk, I would argue, stripping away that kind of good life would be a wonderful practice. Tim Ferriss has spoken about a useful exercise where once a month you sort of just live on bread and water and don't use power. And a sort of survivalist training But I think these sorts of activities are potentially high returns for the time that we will spend, albeit difficult perhaps to turn into a daily practice. Anyway, that's a sort of follow-up, meandering. Did it make sense? Who knows? It is what it is. I'd love, as I say, love to hear from you. Let me know. Otherwise, I do hope your lives are filled with joy, and I'll be back with more ramblings next week. So until then, from sunny Brazil,